Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time stopping by. Today we're going to be doing another video in my deck collection series. We're going to be talking about my esoteric decks. So it's not going to be my longest video in this collection, but I do actually have more than I expected in this category. So if you're curious what the, I guess I would call them grown-up, very esoteric decks are in my collection, then stay tuned. Before we get into it though, if you're new here, hello, my name is Lisa. I like to make videos here on YouTube all about tarot and oracle and other things divination related. But I'm also a tarot deck creator and an author. I will throw a graphic up on the screen so you can see my current things that are out and about in the world. Also, at the time you're watching this, I am just about to, or have just, launched my next deck, Unicorn's Journey Oracle, which is the one I was doing fancy tricks with at the beginning of this video. Very excited about this deck. You can learn all about it at the link down below. And if this Kickstarter hasn't yet launched, do be sure and click that notify on launch button. But right now I am planning to launch this Kickstarter just after this video goes up. So if everything goes according to plan, that's sort of the plan, or actually I guess a week after this video, whatever, just keep your eyes peeled. But this is actually a standalone oracle deck that does continue on in the universe that I created with my Unicorn's Journey Tarot. It has very strong self-worth themes, but it also has a lot of balance. So it's 70 cards and 5 suits, and each suit has 14 cards neatly and carefully balanced between light, neutral, and shadow themes. I'm really, really proud of it. Cannot wait to see it out in the world. This is a bare bones first test print, so I've tweaked it slightly even since this print. But if we reach all our stretch goals, we'll have gold foil sparkly sun on the back, we'll have colored edges, and fancy details for the box. So do support the campaign if this catches your interest. I'm really excited to bring this out into the world. Now, with that being said, let's jump into my esoteric deck collection in no particular order, but it looks like I do have more oracles than, I guess it's kind of, actually, no, I don't. I have way more tarot than oracle. So we're going to start with the tarot. And these are, in, like I said, no particular order. But let's begin with this one. This is the Fortuna Tarot, and it is an astrology-based tarot that I absolutely adore. I keep it in this little wrap because I use it for very specific types of readings, or when I'm called to work with astrology in a very specific way. For those of you who are interested in things like deck and walks, this deck, and it comes in several variations, makes an absolutely beautiful accompaniment to a deck and walk because it's got so much rich astrological information baked into it. This is the Amethyst Aura edition. There have since been 3 other editions. There's an Emerald edition that's greens with gold hollow foil accents. There is a opal edition that is very peachy with a light background and a sort of pinky golden hollow accent. It's just beautiful. And then there's also an obsidian version that has come out since then, which just is absolutely breathtaking with like a really dark holographic, I think it's like a red pink, kind of a pinky toned or cherry colored holographic. It's beautiful. Having different variations is really nice because this is such a striking deck. So when you find a colorway that works for you, like look at that rainbow foil. It is just something else. So this is a pip deck, but the guidebook is very, very thorough. And so what you get, particularly again, for those of you interested in a deck and walk, for every tarot you get in the guidebook, you'll get keywords, of course. You'll get the element, the name of the deck and ruler. So here it's Lord of Loss in Pleasure. That would be the name of the deck and that this card is associated with. And an astrological influence, which breaks down what the astrology is. So Mars in Scorpio. So it would be associated with that. And then when you read through this write-up that's in here, you get not only an explanation of what the card means, but you also get a breakdown of how the astrology plays into it. So for example, the 5 of Elixirs, which is Cups, is ruled by the first decan of Scorpio, which relates to Mars in Scorpio. The planet of war feels strong in Scorpio's traditional domicile, home position. So you don't need to know astrology to read this because the creator, Maria, who is just brilliant with her guidebooks, makes sure to kind of specify what it is that she's talking about. So when she says domicile, she puts in parentheses home. So you know exactly what you're looking at. When she says Elixirs, which is the name of the suit, she renamed it, she puts in parentheses Cups. So you know you're never lost, right? Anyways, the sign of Scorpio is linked to death and transformation, representing how life is fleeting, and so is everything. And so everything that begins must also come to an end at some point, as this is just part of the natural cycle. And then it goes on to talk even more about the 5 of Elixirs. I'm wondering if there's anything else. Traditional, so it talks about like the traditional imagery, the imagery on the card, and then of course you get a reverse meaning as well. And so that's done for every single card. It gets the same treatment. It doesn't matter if it's a major or a minor. If anything, actually the majors are more succinct because they only have one major influence. So here we have the Hermit is Virgo, and we get these like single page like quotes, which is kind of cool through the majors, but everything gets the same amount of explanation. So here you will read about why Virgo makes sense. So it talks about the sign of, or sorry, in this case, Gemini, because it's the lovers. So it'll say like the sign of Gemini symbolizes the constant duality found in life. This is why we can also see the card of the lovers. Essentially, if you're looking for a tarot deck that merges astrology, references, and symbology with the tarot in a way that's really easy to understand, this is such a beautiful one for that. And then of course the deck itself is gorgeous. There's nothing quite like it. I do tend to reach for it when I'm in the mood to work with a pip deck, which I often am. I like to use pip decks for certain types of questions. I like to use pip decks for when I need to, I think, step back a little bit from the interpersonal nature of a situation. Sometimes if it's a question about, say, business, money, finance, work, these are definitely times when I will tend to reach for pip decks. Or other situations where I want a more impersonal, I don't know how else to say that, kind of approach. I like pips for that because they get me out of my own way a bit. And whenever there's a lot of scenery or interpersonal dynamics on a card, I tend to think relationally. How do I say that? Relationally? I tend to think about relationships. I can't think of the right word. Relationally, that's the word. I tend to think relationally when I see interactions between characters or whatnot on a card. So pips are really useful for me for that reason. And I love having a few really just enticing and beautiful pip decks. And this is one of my absolute top favorites. It was very tempting to me to just want all of the different colors. I am content with my amethyst, although I do give that obsidian one a lot of side eye. It's really breathtaking. But I love the silver rainbow holographic foil. I think that's one of the reasons I am drawn most to this one, because as I said, both the opal version and the green version, the emerald version, both have gold hollow, and it's still absolutely beautiful and rainbowy, but I'm just really drawn to the silver. But regardless, that is the Fortuna Tarot, and I don't reach for it a ton. It does have this beautiful case. So it just feels kind of special, a little bit sacred. I love it. It's really lovely. So that is the amethyst aura of the Fortuna Tarot. Love that. So let's look at another tarot. Actually, yeah, let's look at another tarot. I'm not actually sure now that at the time I was categorizing my decks, I hadn't yet worked with this. This is the Terra Volvatile. And I put it in this category, esoteric, because it feels like such an esoteric deck. However, I will point out that after working with it, once you sort of customize your deck or you get it the way you want it, the base deck, so the original foundational deck, doesn't feel, it feels rich and earthy and grounded, I guess in the same way a deck like the Pagan Otherworlds feels like that. It feels like that. However, it reads like, I don't know, like any tarot. It doesn't feel like it takes me to a particularly esoteric place when I'm just working with it out of the box the way that it is now. But I will say that with the additional suit in here of vessels, it does take a very strong alchemical lean. And I have not studied the vessels yet, but I'm very excited to get into them. In fact, I have this soft bound, they call this the pocket edition of the book, but it's still quite like a nice size book. But they have a whole section in here for the vessels, and I really want to read that and study that a bit, as well as a section in general. I think is it near the beginning or is it in the vessels section where they talk about, like, for example, here's the 7 stages of alchemy. We have the information on that. Actually, I've reread this, but I think I'm going to move my bookmarks. I think I want to start... Yeah, I think I want to start there. I had started to read this, but because I took a long break, I'm going to have to start over. But anyways, once I study the vessel suit is sort of meant to, it seems very fluid, like you would with water. But the vessel suit is an alchemical suit. So it's meant to represent sort of the materia prima, or the essence of all elements combined, I guess you could say. That's my understanding, but again, I haven't studied it yet, so take that with a grain of salt. But that will add a very strong alchemical lean to this deck. And I'm excited to study that extra suit so that I can work it into the deck and actually pull that alchemical meaning into my readings when I work with this. But I have read with it just without the vessel suit, and it reads just like a regular old tarot deck. So it's much more approachable than I think it appears on its face, but I'm very excited to get more into that alchemical bit and learn about it for sure. So Terra Volvatile, love this deck. It's very safe at the moment. I'm really excited about it and enjoying it. Okay, so since we're on the subject of alchemy, my favorite and preferred alchemical deck is this one, the Tarot of the Alchemical Magnum Opus. Now this is a deck by Robert M. Place, who is probably, I would say, more well known for the Alchemical Tarot, I think is what it's called. Yeah, I think it's just called the Alchemical Tarot. And I have read Robert M. Place's giant book that goes into the whole background of the Alchemical Tarot, as well as the Tarot of the Sevenfold Mystery. But this was the one that ended up becoming my, like, Robert M. Place tarot. Like, this is the one. And it's partly because it's distilled in a way that I find really approachable if you want in a deck based on alchemy that you can, I think, that you can wrap your head around. And that's partly because the alchemical symbology is right on the nose. It's very clearly and succinctly explained in the little included staple-bound booklet that comes with it. Now, this edition, I don't know if it'll tell us which edition this is. This might be the first. It says an iconic edition of the Alchemical Tarot. I think I got this when this first came out, and I believe it may have new versions since. In fact, this was the first deck, as far as I recall, that Robert M. Place put out that had this, like, really nice linen covered slide box style. And I think his other decks now also come in this style. It's a really marvelous little deck. And what I especially love about it is that the major arcana have several of them have had their titles renamed to match up with their alchemical stages. So instead of this just being the Judgment card, card 20 in the major arcana, it's Resurrection. But like I said, the alchemical nature of the cards is intentionally very on the nose. Like here we have Greater Dissolution, and we see the red and the white coming out of the tower here. And the sort of crucible or fire is burning within. This deck made me feel like I could wrap my brain a little bit around astrology, or around alchemy. Fermentation for justice, and we see the symbology necessary. But it also functions as a really effective little pip deck, so I do enjoy it also for the same reasons I enjoy the Fortuna Tarot, just to pull out and read with. And while I don't feel like Lapis Albus, for the moon, while I don't feel like I have memorized all the alchemical stages and always remember them when I'm working with this deck, I find that the way that the pips are arranged with this, I've talked about this in my other collection videos, but I tend to be drawn to these sort of pip decks that pull a little bit of imagery in, or a little bit of a intentional arrangement of the pips to make it clear that there is a nod to the Rider-Waite-Smith. I really enjoy that. Love conjunction here for the lovers. And so the Red King for the Emperor. I really enjoy that. There's like a little nod to Marseille and the Ace of Coins there. Greater conjunction for the Sun. So you get this really great introduction, I think, to alchemy, but it's very, very easy to pull in. And like, so here's the Hermit, which is exaltation, right? So if I go to this little booklet, just to give you an example, and I'm assuming this deck is still in print. As with all the decks I'll be talking about today, there will be links down below for everything that is available still. So exaltation for the Hermit puts us here. So it says, exaltation is an enhancement like meditation. The alchemist is contained in the Ouroboros, the serpent of time, representing solitude, inner guidance, and being alone. But I believe, unless I am mistaken, there is a brief, I could be wrong, introduction to the stages, but maybe not. Maybe I had to Google that. Exaltation is an enhancement like meditation. Yeah, to dive more deeply into the symbolism, I highly recommend my book, Tarot, Magic, Alchemy, Hermeticism, and Neoplatonism, which is the book I referenced. I read. It's huge. Very, very good book. But anyways, talks about the deck. I don't think it gives you like a full breakdown of all the stages, but it does reference them. So for example, if we go to another one here, like look at this with all the planets for the 7 of Coins. Love that so much. Okay, so here's the Lapis Philosophorum. This is the world. So that's going to be the Philosopher's Stone. So it should give us just enough to understand that that's what that is. Yeah. Lapis Philosophorum. This is the Philosopher's Stone, the red elixir of healing, and the essential 5th element composed of the anima mundi, the soul of the world, the good and inner guide, the attainment of our goals. So you get enough to sort of understand. Priestess of Water will say, she begins the separation of the elements called disillusion. She is water, esoteric, spiritually, intuition, a secret, or something that cannot be spoken. So again, just a little hint at the alchemical process. The White Queen, she continues the dissolution and represents the element earth, ascension, attraction, fertility, and the feminine principle. So if you kind of read through these in order in the booklet, you'll get like a rough idea of the alchemical process, which is pretty cool. Baptism for the Star. Anyway, it's very, very cool. And just like I said, it also just reads really well as like a pip deck. Like just, I don't have to pull in the alchemy if I don't want to, but I like that it's right there and it's on the surface. And it remains a deck that when I have the time to get a little deeper into alchemical study will be probably my go-to for that reason. But really love this, not going anywhere. Which, by the way, I should clarify. The reason I'm saying that is because I am also using these collection videos as an opportunity to sort of examine what I have and whether anything needs to be rehomed. So let's take a look at an oracle deck. So the Wild Way. This would work really beautifully, by the way, with Fortuna Tarot. I'm not using it that way this year, but this is a Deccan-based oracle deck that is super adorable. Inspired by ancient customs, traditions, and lore, the Wild Way Oracle deck invites you to explore the natural world, reflect on the changing seasons, and celebrate the passing of the year. 44 oracle cards and access to a digital guidebook, but they've since come out with a hardbound book that I also have that I highly recommend. But the Wild Way, mine's in order because I've been working through it with the decans. But a decan is, if you don't know, a decan is every sign of the 12 astrological signs can be broken up into 3 chunks of 10 degrees each, and that is a decan. So as we move through a calendar year, beginning with the sign of, I think it's Aries that kicks us off. Beginning with the sign of Aries, you have 3 decans, right? And so there's a card for each of these 10 degrees of that sign, and you move your way through them kind of in order throughout a calendar year. That is called a decan walk, where you're sort of intentionally paying attention to what energy you're in at any point in the year. So I have been doing that starting in 2025 with this deck, and I began with Gemini 1, which is why that one's at the bottom, like at the beginning of my deck. And at the time I'm filming this, we are in Cancer 1. And so it's really beautiful. It's a fun way to explore the decans. I find that the key theme or keyword on the card gives us the heart of the energy of that decan. The art is adorable, and the book that you can get as a standalone accompaniment to this is so good. It's my favorite sort of decan walk tool. And I tried a decan walk using other decks. I worked with Fortuna Tarot, which was fabulous, and a bunch of like really heady sort of books. And the simplest way I found to do the decan walk is with this little deck. It's so fun. And again, I'm only just barely into it, but I'm really enjoying it. Let's talk about some thothy decks. Now, I have another section I'm going to be covering later on called reference decks. That's going to be decks that I keep because they are important to reference or to have a copy of. And so my like original Thoth would probably lie in that. But I do have a couple of Thoth-inspired decks here. And I don't know that I need to keep them both. So I'm going to be looking at both of them with an eye to that. But I do like them both, so I don't know, we'll see. So this is the little Asherah Tarot. Now this is a deck that it comes in a pocket version, which is the one that I have here. I don't know if it's still in print, and it also has, you can also get a full-size version. So this is the little pocket. It's on a really nice little linen cardstock, and it comes with these like extra little cards instead of like a book. So you have like a Kabbalah Tree of Life diagram, and then you have a little bit of information on each of the Sephirot. Court card information on that side, and that side, I guess. Yeah, court cards. Then you have another little diagram of the Kabbalah. And then starting on this side, you have minor arcana, or this is the end of the minor arcana. Yeah, 5, 6s, 3s. So we start here. So let me just put these in order. Ace 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So these go like that. I don't know. Mine are all in kind of a funky order, but... And then there's also major arcana, little write-up. So this is, instead of a guidebook, you have these cards that kind of have the meaning of everything. I love that it has these like little reference bits of information, but I don't really love this. I'd prefer to have like a little guidebook myself, but I understand why that's done. It is definitely easier for a lot of people. What I love about the Asherah Tarot is just how colorful it is. There's a lot of mandala type energy. So here's the 3 of Wands. We have very clear call outs to the astrological associations. I will say a deck like this also makes a great accompaniment to a decan walk, because you know right away this is Sun and Aries for the 3 of Wands. So you know what decan you're in. Here we have the Devil. So this has got Capricorn. I'm not sure what that symbol is. I forget. Here we have Capricorn, no, Saturn, and Sagittarius for the 10 of Wands. So it's really bright. It's really colorful. I loved the swirling colors. I love all these like sort of mandala-like images. I find it more, I really don't like this face in the sun though. It's a lot to kind of look at, but it's got so much color and vibrance, and I really enjoyed that about it. But while I enjoyed working with this during my Thoth study, and I think I came away with this being my favorite at that time, I haven't really felt called to work with it since. If I'm being honest with myself, I think this is probably one that I can put on the chopping block. So I think that's what I'm going to do now that I'm flipping through it. It is beautiful, but I also find that with so much going on, these smaller cards do kind of do it a little bit of disservice for me personally, as I find that nowadays when cards are highly detailed, I do appreciate them being a little bit bigger. But it does shuffle like a dream. It's a little poker based. The colors are great. They line up with the Thoth colors. Really easy, like I said, to spot the astrological information if you're looking for that. But they're still borderless. Like, it's just really, really well done. You can tell this is somebody who knows and loves the Thoth system. So really nice. But I don't actually reach for Thoth a whole lot. As I said, it's kind of more esoteric for me. And as such, it just doesn't end up getting a lot of play in my personal rotation. I just don't think, oh, I really want to reach for a Thoth tarot most of the time. But I think that if I were going to feel that way, the one that I really, really want to work with, I haven't yet, but I really, really want to work with is the Maryielle Tarot, which came into my life a lot later than the other. My Thoth study was well and truly over, but this is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And I would much prefer to work with this over even the traditional Thoth. So this deck, if you can still get it, this is an indie deck. There were some, come out of the box. Okay, so there's some extra cards, a couple alternative lovers cards, and then I think you're meant to hand number this with your Kickstarter backer number or something, which I never bothered to do, but those all sit at the bottom. And it came with this really nice, quite heavy paper. It has almost a vinyl-y feel to it. It's definitely coated Kabbalah chart. So if you want just a reference chart, this definitely has it. And it opens up nice and big, really easy to read everything. So you can see the paths of, I should lay this out again. You can see the paths of the major arcana. You can see all the numbers, all the planetary associations, information on the pillars, like everything you need in a Kabbalah chart is right here. So it's really, really handy. I keep calling it a Kabbalah chart. It's a tree of life. Sorry for my, and it's the same actual chart you get in this little card here too, which actually should go on the bottom. Because if I'm going to reference, I'm going to pull out this one before I pull out that one. And I will show you the art, I promise, but also I want to gush about the guidebook because it's really well done. Cardstock here is absolutely glorious. It is a black core linen. And this one feels a little bit closer to the imagery you find in the actual Thoth Tarot, but it's been completely repainted in this artist's style, who is Masha, I think, Kulinovic. Just a beautiful rendition of the Thoth Tarot. It's gorgeous. It's yummy. I want to sink my teeth into it. It's so beautiful. And so when I think about working with Thoth, this is definitely the deck that I think of. So it's safe in my collection for sure. I love this tower with the person who's been split. I think that's really powerful. Some of the art goes a little bit further afield from what you see depicted in the original Thoth, which I appreciate. But mostly it stays very true to the system and to what you expect to see in a Thoth card. I really love this. So yeah, it's beautiful. It shuffles like a dream. It's a nice size. It's bigger than standard tarot. I'd say it's more like an oracle size, but because it's a really nice linen cardstock, it just, oh my gosh, it shuffles like a dream. But on top of that, the book is so incredibly well done. So I'll give you an example of a minor arcana. So you get the main card you're speaking about. So this is the Two of Wands. Then you get underneath that, and this again would make this wonderful for a deck and walk, but you get the astrological reference. So here we have Mars and Aries, and then it gives you a little snapshot of the major arcana cards associated with those two, with that planet and that sign. So it says Mars in Aries is characterized by courage, resourcefulness, impulsiveness, violence, and irritability. And then you get a little snapshot of Mars as the Tower and Aries as the Emperor. So you get that little snapshot plus a little write-up here. Mars assists the individual in the development, realization, and affirmation of their true nature. Mars also safeguards from the detrimental influence of others, the Tower. Aries is a cardinal sign, active, fearless, assertive, and enthusiastic, the Emperor. And then you get a reference to the Tree of Life association. So the Tree of Life, this is Hakma and Atziluth. Hakma and Atziluth is the spontaneous will. And it says Banzaf, whatever that means. And then symbolism. The two Dorje, the demon masks, the flames, the Two of Wands symbolizes this. So you get all of the associations you need, and arguably this is a perfect standalone. If you just wanted to read with a Thoth deck and have all the information you need to understand it, this has everything all in one set. It's really brilliantly put together, and I am such a huge fan. Even when you get into like the book, you have an explanation of the 4 worlds in the Kabbalah, which is incredible. I mean, that's amazing. You have a chart here that has the different letters of the Tetragrammaton and how they are associated. I mean, it is, you have a decan wheel, which granted, it's very small. But you could, especially, like I have a tool. I'm going to show you guys my tool, especially because I've been doing so much like biblical studies and footnotes are small. I got this magnifier that opens up and actually has a little light, which is amazing. So if I wanted to view, I don't know if I can make it so the camera can see, but I can, you can actually, it makes it just really, really easy to read all of that super tiny print. It's incredible. So this little tool has been really handy. So yeah, I can read any of that small text super easy. I mean, I can also put on my glasses, but my glasses don't magnify that much. But yeah, you get an introduction to the suit, which gives you an introduction to the one of the worlds. So here it's Bria, associated with Kabbalah, that is associated with that suit. I mean, it's just, it's very well put together. And so you get, this is more than just a deck to me. This is also like a study tool. If you were interested in studying Thoth, I feel like this is literally everything you need. I'm sure there's definitely more you could add to this, but much like how the Wild Way makes such a perfect, like everything you need for a deck and walk, this is like everything you need for a Thoth study. It's just, it's very exciting to me how well done this is. So I hope it's still in print. I will have a link to it down below. So, but I just appreciate this in so many, I just appreciate this so much. Okay, enough gushing about that. Let's talk about another, actually let's talk about two oracles because these are definitely in competition with each other. And I've put them in a this or that video before, which if you've never seen one of those, that is where I have decks that sort of fill the same niche in my collection. And so I'm trying to decide which I want to keep. And I ended up keeping both last time. I don't know where I'm at with these. I have not felt any need to work with these for a very long time. I think part of it is that my own practice has shifted. I stopped doing a lot of really, really active spell work a long time ago. I still do some, but I just feel like so much of what I do now is more intention based and doesn't require a lot of tools and a lot of things. And I just haven't been set up that way for so long. But let's look at them. So this is my all-time favorite little spell deck. If you were looking for something like that, this one has been such a joy to work with, and for two reasons. One, it's Paulina Fay, or on here it's Paulina Cassidy. I think Paulina goes by Paulina Fay now, but it's her artwork, which is so delightful. It's a little bit more honed in. This would make a really sweet accompaniment to a deck like the Joie de Vivre or any of her other decks, I think, really, that are more fantastical like this would work really well. But it's every theme here is a theme you might want to do a little intention work or spell work around. So inspiration, and you'll get a little like affirmation. An inspired mind is willing to reach beyond limitations. And so I've used these kind of like spell cards, altar cards. When I'm doing work in this area, it's really great to just pull this out, have something sort of holding that area of energy for you so that you can do that work. And to a degree, I mean, like I'm looking at this and I'm like, it's still so perfect for that. It just reminds you, and there's a lot of really good themes in here, from rejuvenation to wellness to strength to patience, sanctuary. It's just really great for that. I still really like it looking at it. I don't know, there's something about it. And then the other thing that this does really well is it has this little book of spells inside. So like, let's say you wanted to work on, what is this? Let's pick a better example. That's aura. Well, no, let's just use it. It's fine. Okay, so aura, if you go to that in here, it will say Aura by Wisteria. So this is the name of the character is Wisteria. So it'll say Wisteria zips to and fro with nary a flit nor flutter, cleaning your aura as she does her home, free of the dirt and clutter. And it talks about your aura. It's a powerful energetic vibration surrounding your body. It's an invisible dome of light, a living blanket of protective energy, etc. So it talks about the aura. And then you get a few, usually like 2 to 3 spells you can do. And they're always very, very, very simple without a lot of fancy ingredients. So for example, we have aura combining, which doesn't require any special ingredients at all. Then you have an aura cleansing bath where it asks you to have sea salt, lavender essential oil, which is optional, and a white candle and a safe candle holder. There's ball of light, which doesn't have any special ingredients. And then crystal cleanse, where you just need a clear quartz crystal. And all of the spells are like that. They very rarely have something very fancy you need. And if it is fancy, it'll say something like optional, right? Most of the time. Some of them have a few more ingredients, but they're always very, very, very simple and stripped back. So you have like a little activity you can do. Man, I look at this. I don't even know if this is still in print. I don't think I'm ready to put this on the chopping block because I do think it's quite lovely. I'm just thinking though, will I reach for it? I don't know. I feel like it's nostalgia that makes me cling to this. I think I am going to put it on the chopping block. I think just because I just don't reach for it. But it is such a lovely tool for what it is. So I think I'm going to put it on the chopping block, but we'll see. We'll see. And if that one's going on the chopping block, this one probably for sure is, because this one is also really good. I just like witchlings just a little better. This one is a very similar functioning tool. So it has the same kind of thing. It's like a book of little spells, and the actual deck itself is spell work. So here we have a spell for self-love, candle for vitality, sigil for dream work. The art style is really funky and edgy in a cool way. Here we have candle for sensuality, spell for abundance, what will become. There's some really cool themes covered here. Spell for joy, candle for strength, sigil for eros, spell for awakening, spell for trust, welcome mystery. I mean, it's good. I definitely don't reach for this. And it doesn't have that extra draw of the super adorable cuteness that Witchlings does, but arguably, like, there was a time in my practice where this hit more of that sort of raw place of magic that worked better for me. But these are both excellent, excellent decks. And if they're both still in print, they are both mass market. Weird Sisters is by Wiser Books and Witchlings is by US Games, but they're both going in the chopping block for now. Okay, let's go to another tarot, because I think I've only got one oracle left. Let's talk about the Spirit Keepers Tarot, the Revelation Edition. I have had this deck in my collection twice, and the original first edition Spirit Keepers Tarot in my collection once. And there is something that just kept drawing me back to this, which is why I brought this back in. This is my favorite of all of the editions of Spirit Keepers, although arguably I will say the first edition felt the most potent. I don't think potency is really what I'm after with this deck anymore, though. So with that said, I don't miss the first edition, but it was special. There was nothing quite like it. The Spirit Keepers is one of those decks that I think it just intimidated and intimidates a lot of us, but it does work really well just as a tarot, just as a tarot deck. And I think sometimes we overthink it. I overthink it for sure, because there's so much packed into this esoterically. I do have the big book of maps that goes with this edition, and it is incredible. But there's nothing quite like this deck for just having so much sort of coded and baked into it. It feels like a deck that has been programmed for a purpose, which is, of course, what it is. And if you want to learn more about that, I encourage you to read more about the creation of this deck on Benabel Wen's blog. It's a brilliant contribution to the tarot world. It's really different. I really appreciate its existence. I have worked with this, just pulled it out and done readings with it, and it functions beautifully in that context. I don't tend to think of it that way a lot. In a lot of ways, this is very much sort of a collectible that I just need to keep. I think that when there's something very particular in mind, when I have a very particular goal, especially if it involves communication outside of the mundane realm, this is the first deck that I think of, because it feels very safe to use in that context, because of course that's what it was designed for. And Benabel baked a lot of protection into this deck for that purpose. So it's really beautiful. This colored version is spectacular. And seeing it evolve in the various iterations over the years has been really, really, really gratifying to see. The little guidebook that comes with this is more thorough, I guess, or more involved than previous editions. Had a much more stripped back little guidebook, but the separate book of maps is a treasure. This is just one of those things that I feel like I learned my lesson. I don't plan to let this go again. And it is what it is. I may not use it a whole lot, but when I need this, this is what I need. So it's perfect for that. And I really am so grateful for it. Okay, let's talk about the Maryielle Tarot. This definitely, I put this into esoteric. In truth, I mean, it is a very esoteric feeling deck, but the way that it functions in my practice is more spiritual. So I suppose I should have put it into the spiritual category, but I did not. So here we are. This is the second edition. I did at one point have the first edition, which I had trimmed and made borderless and written on the cards and done all kinds of shenanigans too. I'm going to be more careful about how I show these cards, because there is some that are pretty intense to look at from I don't want to get in trouble with the YouTube, so we'll put it that way. Anyway, this is one of those decks that has so much going on in it and can be very, very powerful to work with. Again, much like the Spirit Keepers Tarot, it has a lot to offer. However, I really struggled with how to fit it into my practice. So I pulled this deck in for a Badass Unicorn only tarot test drive, which if you don't know, in my membership, our Badass Unicorns, I started a new series a few months ago called Tarot Test Drive, and that's what we do in the Badass tier. We get together once a month. We have a very collaborative, workshop-y sort of live stream. And in that, we break down a particular deck, or maybe even a category of decks. Our last one was actually on fairy tale decks. And we find a way to build a practice around that tool. And this is I think this is the first one we did. And oh my gosh, it was amazing. We ended up having the most chilling, breathtaking experiences ever working with this deck. I created a bit of a spread and a practice around it that was so powerful and cool, but it involves working with the energy of the soul. And in that context, this deck does such an incredible job. It's just been really cool. It's not the kind of reading I would need to do all the time, so it's not something I plan to pull out all the time. But for now, with that practice in mind, this has a place in my collection for that specific check-in style of reading. It was really cool to read that way for others too, to get into these like really deep places. But it does involve really being able to sit with the reading, go into the book, kind of almost use the book in a bibliomantic kind of way, see what jumps out at you sort of thing. And it just ended up being just such a cool experience. So definitely enjoy this for that. And again, this is another one where I feel like there's a collectible aspect to this for me, because it was a deck that really changed, I think, how a lot of us looked at what tarot could potentially do or be. This one and Spirit Keepers sit in a similar place in my brain. Like, they exist for a very specific type of work, and in that work, they are unequaled by any other deck. A deck that I think I might be ready to put on the chopping block is the Cerillion Sequence. I have considered doing a test drive with this deck as well. This was actually sent to me around the time of the Kickstarter campaign by the creator for review, and it's quite a special one. And I spoke about this quite a lot. I don't know, did I write in this? Yeah, I did. So I don't want to spoils anybody. Here's one that I haven't written on. Yeah, I stopped writing. Hold on. I stopped writing in the book. I was translating. And at a certain point, I got to, which is right about here, it looks like, right around the 6s, I stopped needing to write it down because I knew how to read this language, which is okay, let me back up. So the Cerillion Sequence involves a deck that has made up its own language. There's its own script. There's a code for how to translate. It's incredible. This is a numbers-based deck, and so it's in this esoteric section because I don't have any other deck that is based exclusively on numbers, and it was so brilliantly executed. In fact, here is my original little notebook in the back here that has some of my translation notes. I have a whole alphabet with a translation script in here where I literally decoded. I have my name. I have all the individual keywords of all the cards based on their translation, as well as the beginning of me fully translating this, which is a little surprise that, sorry for spoilers, but that comes in your kit. And so there's a lot going on here. Oh man, with this little, oh my gosh, I don't even know. With this, I'm going to pull this little book out because I think if I'm going to put this on the chopping block, like whoever's next needs to be able to have the experience with this themselves. But regardless, this was an experiential thing for me. I got it. I was obsessed with it. I decoded the entire thing. I got to know it. I spent time with it. It was almost like if somebody gives you a puzzle or a puzzle book and then you solve all the puzzles in the book. And that was the value for me in this deck initially. It was the experience of getting it and decoding it. And there's a deep message that lies between and around the layers of this deck, between the pages and in the messages and in the keyword choices. This deck has multiple cards with each number from 1 to 9. I think, is there 0 in here? I don't think so. Oh no, there's zeros. So 0 to 9. But there's also, like I said, a greater story being told with this deck. And if you take the time with it to really decode it and spend that time with it, you will unpack that. And then it's really marvelous. And then, of course, the deck still functions as a deck after that if you want. But here's my problem. I spent all of that time decoding the script and really understanding it and getting to know the greater story, reading through the greater story. Like, all of that happened for me. And it was so beautiful. And the role of numbers in it was intentional and profound. However, once I'd kind of ticked all of those boxes and accomplished all of those goals, I found myself not reaching for it, much like once you've solved a puzzle, you don't go back and solve it again. That's one aspect. But then the other aspect is also just being aware that while I was actively spending time in this deck and with this deck, I could read this script like easily. But then as I took a break from working with this deck and then went back to it, I don't remember the script anymore. There's a few letters I recognize from back then, maybe more than a few, but overall, I can't just read it as easily as I could when I was actively decoding and working with it. It's a little bit lost to me again. And that's such an interesting experience all its own. On that front, I suppose I could then dive back into it and solve the puzzle once more for myself. But I don't know that I need to do that. I feel like the value for this deck for me was in the experience of it, of unboxing it, of playing with it, of decoding it. And I got my entertainment value, I guess you could say, out of this deck. If I had purchased this with my own money, and I didn't, I think I would feel the same. Like, it's kind of like you'll spend X amount of dollars to go out to a movie or to buy a new video game and then complete that video game. And even if you never play that video game again, you've had the experience of it. That's kind of how I feel about this. I feel like I had the experience of it and the experience was wonderful. But I don't need to have that experience again. I'm good now. Like, I've done it. I've done the thing. And so I think this is going on the chopping block because I haven't found a way to work this into my practice. And while I could do a test drive and figure it out, I think short of writing words on the cards, unless I'm in it all of the time, and I don't feel the need to reach for a numbers deck all the time, unless I'm in it all of the time, I have to relearn it each time. And so for that purpose, I feel like, again, the value was in the initial experience of it. And I've had that experience now. But oh my gosh, if you go watch my walkthrough on this deck, you will see I had just the most amazing time. I loved every second of the experience of getting to know this deck. It was such an immersive time. I felt like I got pulled into a whole other world, and no other deck has done that for me. So it's pretty freaking special. I don't know how I would recommend it as like a deck for working with because I never really spent that much time doing that with it, but pretty cool. It's going on the chopping block though. And that brings us to the last deck in my esoteric collection, and that is the newest addition to this collection, the Alanto Tarot. I can't give a feedback or review on this because I literally, at the time I'm filming this, just got this in, so I have not worked with it yet. But we're going to take a little peek at the guidebook and the cards real quick. So this deck is packed, like jam-packed with symbology. It is mass market. We're going to start with the aces. Yeah, it is mass market. There's 100 cards because there is the addition of, let me get to the purple cards here. I guess it's like with, I want to say it's a Triomphe deck that also has like virtues and astrological signs as extra cards. And this does that. So here we have Taurus with the bull, Gemini with the twins, the crab for Cancer, the lion for Leo. It's a really fun art style too. It's very playful and kind of goofy in a great way. But then through the minors, you have very strong color coding, so you know exactly what element you're working with, which is amazing. But then you also have tons of symbology baked into the artwork in a way that makes it really, really easy to look at. We have playing card associations baked in as well. It is something that I'm really excited to get to know better. I just love this combination of colorful, bright, fun artwork paired with layers of symbology. It's very smart, and I'm excited about it. So that is the Alanto Tarot. I don't love these split box designs. I wish that deck publishers would not do it ever, but there we have it. So I can't really report back on this just yet, but the guidebook does have an explanation of what you're getting in the card, an upright and reversed meaning. Looks like there is references here to the decans again, which is incredible. So yeah, I think I put this in the right category calling it an esoteric deck. It definitely is, but it feels like esoteric deck that is meant to appeal to people like me who also need bright color and very clear and easy to spot symbology. So very excited about this. Love it as part of my esoteric deck collection, which as you can see is not super, super big, but I feel like everything in my esoteric deck collection serves a very specific purpose. And for that purpose, I am grateful to have these. So just 4 on the chopping block from today's video. Cerillion Sequence, the Witchlings and Weird Sisters, and the Asherah Tarot are on the chopping block this go round. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. As always, an extra big thank you goes out to my Unicorn Fam channel members. Thank you so much for your support of the channel. If you are interested in membership or you were intrigued by the discussion of the Tarot Test Drive series or anything like that, you can always click on the join button to learn more. It will not auto join you. It will just give you information about the different tiers, and you can kind of take a look at what membership looks like here in this channel. But in any case, thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're watching, please do be sure and click the like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you would like to see my videos show up in your subscription feed on YouTube and not just like get served the occasional one through the algorithm. That would be great. But otherwise, thank you so much. And until next time, may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye.